There's that psychological resistance at 100K. I said psychological resistance because it's not a real resistance per se. Because it's a round number, 100,000. You get it at 90,000, 80,000, 60,000. To an extent, you get them at 0.5s as well. You get them at 65, 95, which is why we had a bit of a resistance at 95 as well. So there's psychological round number resistances. But I think that we just need a good, inflow from one of these big ETFs, right? A BlackRock ETF, for instance, and that should plunge us past 100,000. And then the next psychological barrier would be 105 or, 110, whatever the all-time high is. I think, 109. That would be the next one after 105. Then it would be 109, which is the all-time high. And then I don't see that safe at all. I think, within a week or so, we could be in pure and beautiful price discovery. Bitcoin looking really, really nice, I have to say. It's topping the trendings box over there. Solana looking beautiful. Ethereum, surprisingly looking well. They had that upgrade that reduced the cost a little bit. Actually, the price of ETH didn't respond particularly to that per se. The response that we saw in ETH was, I think, it's just tethered to the general good news and expectations around the market and the fact that the US and China are having talks at the moment, which means the large institutions are feeling better about themselves and the ETFs are having inflows again. XRP not looking too bad. It's in the trending box, so that's good by trading volume. So people are buying XRP. Again, it didn't go down as far as the others, which is probably why it doesn't have as much to recover as the others. But we're looking at very, very good times. Now, look at this. Binance founder CZ seeks pardon from President Trump after 4-month stint in prison. I was wondering what would be the point. He's already been to prison. He's done the crime. He's served the time. But then I thought to myself, well, actually, if you get a pardon, then you get your record expunged, which means some of the limitations that he might have on himself vis-a-vis things that he can do in the United States, where he can go, travel, whatever, future aspirations, where he can work, etc. Whether or not he can vote, I don't know if he becomes a citizen of the United States, I suppose, whether or not he can vote. All of those things, I guess, are affected by criminal record. I was about to read this article, and then I noticed this listen to the article. So I'm going to let AI read it, because I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I've got a pretty hoarse voice because I've got this massive inflammation of the glands in my neck. It's something that's going around. A couple of my friends have it as well. I don't know what it is. They're all heavily medicated, but as usual, I just let my body heal itself. I feed myself good nutrition, and then, I get a temperature or whatever, and after a couple of days, I'm feeling better. I'm not one of those people that likes to take too much medication. Anyway, now that I've said that, my account has been shadow banned by Big Pharma.
Binance founder CZ seeks pardon from President Trump after 4-month stint in prison. Changpeng Zhao, founder and former CEO of crypto exchange Binance, is hoping to get a pardon from President Donald Trump after being released from prison late last year. Zhao, better known by his initials CZ, formally applied for a pardon from the Trump administration 2 weeks ago. He said on the Farouk Radio podcast on...
All right, so that's 2 weeks ago from today. So this is something that's actually real. So that podcast, I actually listened to it. I watched it rather momentarily, especially the bit where he talks about Trump, right? So I'm going to play some of it. I hope I don't get copyright stricken. But let's just listen to the rest of this article.
Monday. We only submitted after the Bloomberg article and the Wall Street Journal article came out, CZ said on the podcast, referring to 2 articles from March that reported he was hoping to receive a pardon in exchange for going into business with Trump. And I was like, well, if they are writing this article...
Well, wait a minute. A pardon for going into business? That sounds like corruption. Obviously, he's going to deny that completely. I mean, that doesn't sound right at all. And if that were true, you better believe Blumenthal and those guys that are currently probing Trump or trying to probe Trump and everything that he does, they're going to go crazy. Can you imagine the headlines? Trump partners with criminal, a crypto scammer, for quid pro quo, pardon for, oh man.
Article, we might as well officially apply. At the time, Zhao denied the Wall Street Journal's claims that he was discussing a business deal of any kind,
Of course
but
it
did
does.
not
Of
rule
course it
out the
denies it.
idea of a pardon. No felon would mind a pardon, especially being the only one in U.S. history who was ever sentenced to prison for a single BSA charge.
That's correct. I mean, what he was sentenced for, a lot of bank executives have been found guilty of the same thing, or even more severe versions of what he was sentenced for. But in the history of the United States, only the crypto guy has ever served a single day behind bars for that offense. Because, of course, the establishment people wanted to make a scapegoat of the big crypto CEO, just to basically draw a line in the sand and, say, hey, this is our house, you're playing in now.
He wrote on X. BSA refers to the Bank Secrecy Act, which requires financial institutions to assist the government in preventing money laundering. Zhao's decision to seek the pardon also roughly coincides with an announcement by the president's son, Eric Trump, last week that his family's crypto firm, World Liberty Financial, WLF, had entered a joint venture with Binance and UAE-based venture firm MGX.
Can I just say that Eric Trump talks a lot, man? I mean, like, half of the problems that the Trumps are facing right now, if Eric just shut his mouth and never talks as much, they wouldn't be in half of that trouble. Another thing that he also said that he revealed that Donald Trump holds a lot of Bitcoin. Apparently, Donald Trump is a Bitcoin whale. So apart from, the World Liberty Finance and all the other organizations, etc., the meme coins, blah, 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 he holds spot BTC. So there you go.
The deal calls for MGX to use stablecoins issued by WLF to invest $2 billion in Binance. While details of the deal remain unclear, WLF could net as much as $80 million over the course of a year through yield-off underlying reserves, according to Fortune's estimates. In 2023, Zhao pleaded guilty to failing to implement proper anti-money laundering practices at Binance and resigned as CEO. Binance also pleaded guilty to related charges and was forced to pay over $4 billion in fines.
Wow.
As a result of the suit, Zhao was sentenced to 4 months in prison, which he served from April to September last year. If Trump elects to grant Zhao a pardon, it would hardly be the first time he has exercised his clemency power.
Lately I've been thinking about the other criminals, like FTX's SBF, if you remember him, and Kwon. It seems like such a long time ago that those guys were headlines everywhere for crashing the market and running away with people's money. And because the legal process is so slow to find justice, right? They've gone quiet now. And it's a little bit worrying because now we're in this trend of pardons and, the SEC probes being withdrawn. A lot of these SEC probes were sort of just persecution, right? Regulation via enforcement and going after crypto people to try and make scapegoats of them. But there are actual criminals, actual people that should be brought to justice. Two of which are Kwon and SBF. And it'd be terrible if these guys were to sort of, in the grand scheme of things, get away with all that criminality just because people are getting pardoned left, right, and center. I did a little bit of a look around to see what Kwon, what the latest with Kwon is, because I don't hear anybody talking about Kwon. Just, this time 2 years ago, you couldn't turn a page without seeing Kwon, Terra Luna crash, SBF, blah, 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 but now nothing, radio silence. So I have a quick chat about that right at the end of this video as well.
The president has pardoned hundreds of people in his first 100 days in office, including multiple crypto-related criminals and the January 6 rioters who trashed the Capitol.
Exactly. So crypto-related criminals have been pardoned by President Trump in the last 100 days. So, how big were their crimes? Were there legitimate crimes that affected the average person's pocket, like Kwon and SBF, that crashed the market and affected thousands, if not millions of people around the world? Or just people who, broke regulatory laws that had no actual harm to civilians.
Trump pardoned Ross Ulbricht, the operator of dark web drug trafficking site Silk Road, within his first few days in office, terminating Ulbricht's life sentence after he had spent 12 years in jail. In addition, he pardoned 3 founders of crypto exchange BitMEX, as well as another executive at the company, releasing them from probation after pleading guilty to violating anti-money laundering laws.
Okay, so those are money laundering laws. Serious, but in the grand scheme of things, not anything too different to what, CEOs of some of these bigger banks are doing on a daily basis.
When asked about his thoughts on a second Trump presidency, Zhao said, "This will be a good guy for our industry and also for any sort of people who have a criminal charge."
Interesting. So this is that podcast that they mentioned in that little readout there. And I was actually quite shocked by this channel. He's only got 698 subscribers. If you go to his main page, man, let me just pause that for a minute, and look at some of the videos that he's done. These are big hitters. He's had Donald Trump on there, Mark Cuban. And how even the Donald Trump podcast only got 797 views. This isn't an AI podcast. I mean, it just seems a little bit... I find it hard to believe that that's just the number of subscribers. There's something wrong about this channel. Anyway, let's hear what CZ has to say.
But it's extremely... Now I can laugh about it, but it's extremely hard. Vasily has a 30-year sentence for murdering 2 guys at once.
What are your current thoughts on SBF? After going to prison, do you have more sympathy for him in a way?
This is why I think President Trump understands crypto. The minute you walk in, there are guys with like tattoos, all big buffy guys, like face tattoos, head tattoos. I was scared, yeah.
What's that got to do with crypto? Anyway, let's hurry down to the bit where he talks about a pardon.
It would be awesome for this space if CZ got a pardon, but hopefully I'll see. We saw Arthur Hayes got his.
I believe so.
Arthur Hayes got his. I certainly wouldn't mind one. So I think that's not.
I know you can't ask for it. You're not gonna lobby for it, but come on, y'all.
Yeah.
Come on, let's give our man. You took one for the team here. So
I appreciate that. But the legal means to apply,
of course,
right? I got lawyers applying. And
I'm sure.
We only submitted.
Okay, so yes, he has applied, and that's him saying he has. I believe this is a real video. This is an AI rendition. If this is an AI, I think we're finished because this looks really convincing to me. And this Farouk guy looks also familiar to me. I'm not, man, I don't know.
After the Bloomberg article and Wall Street Journal article coming out, and then I was like, well, if they're writing this article, so might as well just officially apply, right? So at the time I was like, and then also got his. Very recently. So I think we only...
Yeah, if Arthur Hayes gets a pardon, then, there's no reason why, CZ doesn't get a pardon. Now, I hope they don't extend that same energy to Kwon, though. I think this guy mentions SBF once in this interview, and I was like, no, please don't.
Did the application 2 weeks ago.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get that. Yeah. How do you rate the presidency so far?
I think it's great.
Okay, that's not the bit. Yeah, let's talk about the.
What are your current thoughts on SBF? He's serving his time still. Do you after going to prison, do you have more sympathy for him in a way, or do you think it's
nope, not a single ounce of sympathy?
Fair treatment for a long time.
It's very hard for me to comment on what's fair. And
we
what's
don't
not.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think. I don't wish for anyone to go through a prison experience. Yeah. But I do think that bad behavior needs to stop.
Thank you. I'm glad he said that, because obviously he has to be careful about what he says, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we've got to, not just because someone is a crypto star or a CEO of a crypto company, a scammer is a scammer, a criminal is a criminal. So we've got to call those out.
I think anything that deals with fraud, lying, deception, moving...
stealing billions from average everyday people, embezzling their funds, taking people's life savings and spending them on drugs and alcohol and, whatever else. That's terrible.
Well, that should not happen.
Yeah.
So again, but I don't also think that U.S. sentences are generally long, but there are ways to reduce them. So for good behavior, generally you get 10 days off every 30 days of good behavior. So most people only serve 2/3 of their sentence.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Again, I don't want to comment on that issue.
I mean, good behavior. Like, how could he possibly behave badly, and what could he do in prison that would amount to bad behavior? Perhaps, maybe throwing a party, throwing a billionaire party in prison. I mean, what else could he do?
Besides, with anyone in prison,
Okay.
it's not an easy experience.
Right.
And also, long prisons usually don't really help that much, to be very frank. After like so what I've seen in prison,
That's interesting.
the guys who
yeah.
have like 10-year sentences, that becomes their life. They don't think about reforming themselves anymore. They know that most of them have done something wrong. But many of them are way overpunished, and then they just get on with life. It doesn't have any correctionness to it.
It kind of loses the whole
Interesting.
purpose, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just cut it there. I don't want to get copyright stricken. But you get the general gist. So I was on this website researching the other criminal. See, that's SBF there. Interim head of the Kwon. That's the latest news on him. Hold on, close this. Okay, gets US fraud trial date for 40 billion. Oh my God, man. I can't even read that without getting angry. Almost 4 years after the 40 billion failure of the Terra blockchain, its co-founder, brash crypto entrepreneur Do Kwon will face a judge and jury in the United States. Kwon's criminal trial will begin January 26, 2026. So we've still got another half year to go before this guy actually starts facing the law and then eventually probably gets sentenced. But you know what I think? I think that the farther away we get from when the crime actually happens, I think people have become less angry and more desensitized. And I think that his sentence is probably going to be a little bit more lenient because the wound would have healed over a little bit. If this trial happened in 2022, for instance, I think he would have got a severe punishment. He would have been sent away for a long time because the public anger will still be there, and it would be more raw at the time. I think that by the time he actually faces the law, even though it shouldn't matter, the facts should just bear out. I think that it's still going to seem less serious because a lot of people would have sort of healed over, even though they really haven't, because if you've lost your life savings and investments, then it takes a lifetime to bounce back from something like that. Or some incredible luck or whatever. But I think that the public anger still would have cooled off somewhat. Anyhow, I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself. Peace.